Welcome back, everyone. So, this part is going to be very hard. So, I decided to launch a game. First of all, if some of you have kids or know people who are going to have kids, and if you're looking for names, you're going to have a gigantic list, especially very, very original and Greek names. So, if you like Greek names, you're gonna love this part. And yeah, I won't, but anyway. Yeah, the other part of the game is to count how many ships there are going to battle. And finally, another game is, will I finish the bloody chapter? Because honestly, it's really, really hard. But well, anyway, you'll judge for yourselves and we'll see if you like that. Anyway, they cried their summons and the men quickly fell in. The royal chieftains of the king's council bustled about, marshalling the troops, and with them went Athene of the flashing eyes, wearing her splendid cloak, the unfading everlasting aegis, from which 100 golden tassels flutter, all beautifully made, each worth 100 head of cattle. Resplendent in this, she flew through the ranks, urging the men forward, and in each one she inspired the will to carry on the war and fight relentlessly. Before long they were more enamored with the thought of fighting than with that of sailing away to their own country in their hollow ships. As they fell in, the dazzling glitter of their splendid bronze flashed through the upper air and reached the sky. It was as bright as the glint of flames caught in some distant spot, when a great forest on a mountain height is ravaged by fire. Their clans came out like the countless flocks of birds, oh yes, the geese, the cranes, or the long-necked swans that foregather in the Asian meadow by the streams of Cayster, and wheel about, boldly flapping their wings and filling the whole meadow with harsh cries as they come to ground on an advancing front. So clan after clan poured out from their ships and huts unto the plain of Scamander, and the earth resounded sullenly to the tramp of marching men and horses' hoofs as they found their places in the flowery meadows by the river, innumerable as the leaves and blossom in their seasons. Thus these long-haired soldiers of Achaia were drawn up on the plain, facing the Trojans with slaughter in their hearts, as many and as restless as the unnumbered flies that swarm round the cow sheds in the spring when pails are full of milk. And now, with the practised ease with which goat herds sort out their wandering flocks when they have mingled in the pastures, the captains brought their companies into battle order. And in among them moved King Agamemnon, with head and eyes like Zeus the Thunderer, with a waist like the war god's waist, and a breast like Poseidon's. As a bull stands out from the cattle in the herd, conspicuous among the grazing cows, so on that day Zeus made the son of Atreus stand out from the crowd, and eclipse his fellow kings. Tell me now, you muses that live on Olympus, since you are goddesses and witness all that happens, whereas we men know nothing that we are not told, tell me, who were the captains and chieftains of the Danaans? As for the rank and file that came to Ilium, I could not name or even count them, not if I had 10 tongues, 10 mouths, a voice that could not tire a heart of bronze, unless you muses of Olympus, daughters of Aegis-bearing Zeus, would serve me as remembrances. Here then are the captains of the fleet, and here are the ships, from first to last. First, the Boeotians, with Peneleos and Leitus, Archesilas, Prothoenor, and Clonius in command. They came from Hyri and stony Aulis, from Schoenus and Scolis, from Eteonus, where the hills run high, from Thesbia and Graia, and the spreading lords of Mycalessus. With them were those from Hama, from Elysion, and from Erythrae. Elion and Hyle too, and Petion sent their men. So did Ocelia and the stronghold of Medion, Cope and Eutrysis, and Thisbe rich in doves. They came from Coronea too, from grassy Haliaetus, Plataea, Glycis, and the strong town of Lower Thebes. From holy Onchestus, with Poseidon's sacred wood, from Arne, where the grapes hang thick, from Medea and holy Nyssa, and from Anthedon, on the borders of beyond. All these in 50 ships, and 120 young Boeotians in each. The men from Aspledon and Minian Orchomenus were led by Ascalaphus and Ialmenus, sons of Ares, whom Astyoche conceived in the palace of Actor, son of Asius, where the gentle maiden went in secret to an upper room and slept with the mighty war god. They had brought a squadron of 30 hollow ships. Schedius and Epistrophus, sons of magnanimous Iphitus, son of Naubolus, commanded the men from Phocis, who lived in Cyparissus and in rocky Pytho. In sacred Crisa and Daulis and in Panopeus round Animoria and Hyampolis. The lovely waters of Cephisus and Lilia, where Cephisus rises. 40 black ships travelled with these two, under whose command the Phocians fell in and took their battle stations by the Boeotians on the left. Leading the Locrians came the fleet-footed son of Oileus, the lesser Aias, not such a man as Telamonian Aias, indeed inferior by far. He was short and wore a linen corslet, but not a Hellene or Achaean was his equal in spearmanship. His following had come from Sinus, Opus, and Calliarus, from Bessa, Scaphi, and beautiful Augeia, from Taphi and Thronion, and the banks of the river Boagrius. 40 black ships had set out under him, manned by the Locrians who live across the straits from holy Euboea. Euboea itself sent the fiery Obantes, the men of Chalcis, Eritrea, and Histiae, rich in vines, of seaside Cerinthus, and the high fortress of Dias, and those who had their homes at Styra and Charistus. These were all captained by Elephenor, offshoot of the war god, son of Chalcodon, and chieftain of the gallant Abantes. His followers were quick on their feet. They wore their hair in locks at the back, they carried ashen spears, and wished for nothing better than to lunge with them and tear the corslets of their enemies' breasts. 40 black ships came under Elephenor's command. Next, the Athenians from their splendid citadel in the realm of magnanimous Erechtheus, a child of the fruitful earth, who was brought up by Athene, daughter of Zeus, and established by her at Athens in her own rich shrine, where bulls and rams were offered to him yearly in due seasons by Athenian youth. These were commanded by Menestheus, son of Peteos. He had no living rival in the art of handling infantry and horse, excepting Nestor, who was an older man. 50 black ships had come across with him. From Salamis, Aias had brought 12 ships, and beached them where the Athenian force was stationed. The citizens of Argos and Tyrants of the great walls, the men of Hermione and Azene, towns that embrace a deep gulf of the sea, and those from Troezen, from Aeone, and from vine-clad Epidaurus, with the Achaean youth of Aegina and Mases, were led by Diomedes of the loud war-cry, and by Sthelenus, son of the far-famed Capaneus. High-born Euryalus, son of King Mecisteus, son of Talaus, had come with them as third in command. But the warlike Diomedes was in charge of the whole force, and 80 black ships set sail under him. The troops that came from the great stronghold of Mycenae, from wealthy Corinth and the good town of Clonae, the men who lived in Orniae and in lovely Erethiae in Sicyon, where Adrestus resigned in early years, in Hyperese and in steep Gunoesa, in Pellene and round Aegion, in all the length of the coast and the broad lands of Hellas. These, in their 100 ships, King Agamemnon son of Atreus led. His following was by far the finest and most numerous. He was a proud man, as he took his stand among his people, armed in gleaming bronze, the greatest captain of them all, in virtue of his rank and as commander of by far the largest force. The men from the rolling lands of Lacedaemon, deep in the hills, from Pharis and Sparta and Messy rich in doves, from Brisaea and beautiful Augeia, those from Amyclae and the seaside fort of Helos, the villages of Otylis and Las, all these came under the king's brother, Menelaus of the loud war cry, with 60 ships, and had their separate station. Menelaus strode among them, in all the confidence of his own gallantry, and urged them to battle, for nobody was more eager than he to avenge himself for the toil and groans that Helen had caused him. I'll drink. Thank you for the encouragement. Next came the men from Pylos and lovely Arene, from Thryon, where the Alpheus is forded, from handsome Aepi, from Cyparissae, Amphigenea, Teleus and Helos, and from Dorion, where the Muses met Thamyris, the Thracian, as he was on his way from Oechalia and the home of Oechaelian Eurytus. Thamyris had boasted that he would win in a single match with the Muses themselves, daughters of Aegis bearing Zeus. This angered them. They struck him blind. They robbed him of his divine gift of song, and caused him to forget his harping. The Grecian charioteer Nestor was in command of these men. His squadron numbered 90 hollow ships. Then the Arcadians, from the lands where Mount Selene lifts its beak, and Iapetus was buried, where men are trained in hand-to-hand fighting, from Phoenius, from Orchomenus, rich in sheep, from Ripe and Strati and windy Enispe, from Tegia and the pleasant town of Mantinia, and from Stymphalus and Pharisee. They were led by King Agapenor, son of Ancaeus, in 60 ships, where with its complement of trained Arcadian warriors. Agamemnon, king of men, had himself given Agapenor the well-found ships in which to cross the wine-dark sea, as the Arcadians knew nothing of seafaring. The men from Buprasium, and as much of the kindly land of Elis as lies between Hermene, Mercinus and the Marches, the Olenian rock and Elysion, came under 4 commanders, each with a squadron of 10 fast ships filled with Epean troops. So that's 4 times 10, okay? 2 of their companies were led by Amphimachus, son of Cteatus, and Thalpius, son of Eurytus, both of the house of Actar. A third by the stalwart Diores, son of Amarynceus, and the 4th by Prince Polyxenus, the son of King Agasthenes, Augeas' son. Those from Dulichium and the sacred Achaean islands, across the sea from Elis, were led by Meges, the warrior son of Phyleus, a charioteer whom Zeus had loved, and who had departed from his father once upon a time in anger and migrated to Dulichium. 40 black ships made up his company. Odysseus next, leading the proud Cephallenians, masters of Ithaca and the wooded peak of wind-swept Neriton, and those from Crasselia and rugged Aegylips. From forested Jacinthus too, and Samos, and the mainland opposite the islands, there were the forces of Odysseus, whose wisdom rivaled that of Zeus. 12 ships with crimson-painted bows came under him. Maybe they're better ships if they're painted. I don't know. Thoas, Andraemon's son, captained the Aetolians from Pleuron and Olinus, Pylene, Chalcis by the sea, and rocky Calydon. For the sons of Oeneus the Magnificent were no more. Oeneus himself was dead, and so was red-haired Meleager, on whom kingship over all the Aetolians had devolved. Thoas had 40 black ships under him. The illustrious spearman Idomeneus led the Cretans. The men from Cnossus, from Gortyn of the great walls, from Lyctus, Miletus, Chalky, Lycestus, Phaestus, and Rhytion, fine cities all of them, and the other troops that had their homes in Crete and the 100 towns. All these were led by the great spearman Idomeneus, and by Meriones, a compeer of the man-destroying war god. 80 black ships came under their command. Tlepolemus, the tall and handsome son of Heracles, had brought from Rhodes 9 shiploads of lordly Rhodians, whose 3 tribes occupy 3 separate parts of the island, Lindus, Ilissus, and Camarus on the chalk. These were the forces of the famous spearman Tlepolemus, son of the mighty Heracles by Astyochea, whom he carried off from Ephyre and the river Seleuce, sacking many strongholds held by warrior chiefs. Tlepolemus, when he had grown to manhood in the palace, killed his own father's uncle Lysimenius, offshoot of the war god, who was an old man by then. He quickly built some ships, gathered a large following, and fled overseas, menaced as he was by the other sons and the grandsons of the mighty Heracles. Thus, as a fugitive, and after many hardships, he reached Rhodes, where his people settled in 3 districts, according to their tribes, and enjoyed the smiles of Zeus the son of Cronos, king of gods and men, who filled their treasuries with untold wealth. Next there was Nereus, with 3 trim ships from Syme, Nereus, son of Aglaia and King Carapace, Nereus the handsomest Danaan that came to Ilium, excepting only the flawless son of Peleus. And yet he was a weakling, and his following was small. So they don't count, okay. The men from Niceris, Crapatus, and Casus, from Cos, the city of Eurypylus, and the Calydnian Isles, were led by Phaedippus and Antiphus, the 2 sons of King Thessalus, son of Heracles. They had a squadron of 30 hollow ships. We come now to the men that lived in Pelasgian Argos, in Elis and Alope, in Trachis, Phthia, and Hellas, land of lovely women, bearing the names of Myrmidons and Helens and Achaeans. These had sailed in their 50 ships, under Achilles' command, but now the sound and fury of war did not concern them at all. There was no one to draw them up in battle order, for the great Achilles of the nimble feet was lying by his ship, sick at heart for the gentle girl Briseis, whom he had won from Lernussus by the sweat of his brow, when he sacked Lernussus itself, and stormed the walls of Thebe, and brought down the sturdy spearmen Mynes and Epistrophus, the sons of King Aeneas, Seleucus' son. This was the girl he grieved for as he lay there, but he was not destined to lie idle long. I drink again, please. The men that lived in Philice and flowery Pyrrhusus, Demeter's sanctuary in Iton, mother of sheep, and Antron by the sea, and Teleus deep in grass, were led by the warlike Protesilaus while he lived. But by now the black earth had received him in her bosom. He had been the first of the Achaeans to leap ashore, but he fell then and there to a Dardanian foe, leaving his wife in Philice with lacerated cheeks, and his house half built. His followers grieved for their leader, but they were not left without a chief. They were commanded by Podaces, offshoot of the war god and son of Phylacus' son Iphiclus, the lord of many sheep. Podaces was a brother of the great-hearted Protesilaus, a younger brother, the noble warlike Protesilaus, being both the older and the better man. So their troops did not lack a leader, though they mourned the gallant dead. 40 black ships had come under his command. The men that lived in Feria by the Boeotian lake, and Boebe, Glaphyrae, and lovely Iolcus, were led in their 11 ships by Admetus' son, Eumelus, whom queenly Alcestis, Pelias' most beautiful daughter, had borne to Admetus. Those from Mithone, Thaumace, Meliboe, and rugged Olyzon were brought by the great archer Philoctetes in 7 ships, each manned by 50 oarsmen trained to go into battle with the bow. But their commander lay in agony on the lovely isle of Lemnos, where the Achaean army had left him, suffering from the poisonous bite of a malignant water snake. So he lay there pining, though the Argives by their ships were destined before long to think once more of King Philoctetes. Meanwhile, though his followers missed their leader, they were not left without a chief. They were commanded by Medon, the bastard son of Oileus, whom Rhene bore to Oileus sacker of towns. The men from Triche, from Ithome, with its terraced hills, and from Oechalia, the city of Oechaelian Eurytus, were led by the 2 sons of Asclepius, the admirable physicians Podalirius and Machaon. 50 black ships came under their command. Those from Ormenion and the spring of Hypereia, from Asterion and the white towers of Titanus, were led by Eurypylus, Euaemon's high-born son, with 40 black ships under him. Of those that dwelt in Argissa and Gerton, Orthe, Helone, and the white town of Oloson, the dauntless Polypoetus was in command. He was a son of Perithous, son of immortal Zeus. Far-famed Hypodameia had conceived him for Perithous on the day when he took his revenge on the shaggy people of the wilds, expelled them from Pelion, and drove them into the hands of the Aetheses. Polypoetus was not alone, but shared his command with Leontus, offshoot of the war god and son of proud Coronus, son of Caenus. Their squadron numbered 40 black ships. Gonius from Cyphus brought 22 ships. He led the Aenianes and the dauntless Periabians, who had pitched their homes round wintry Dodona and tilled the fields by the delectable Titaresius, which pours its lovely stream into the Peneus, yet does not mingle with the silver eddies of Peneus, but floats along on top of them like oil, being a part of the formidable waters of Styx, the river of the oath. Prothus, son of Tenthredon, commanded the Magnetes, who lived by the Peneus and by Mount Pelion of the trembling leaves. These were the men that the dashing Prothus led. 40 black ships came under his command. These then were the captains and commanders of the Danaans. Finally, now tell me, Muse, of all the men and horses that crossed with the Atreides, which were the first and foremost? Ha-ha! Of the horses, the best by far were those of Admetus, which his son Eumelus drove. Swift as birds, they were alike in coat and age, and were matched to a plumb line all along their backs. Both were mares, and had been reared in Perea by Apollo of the silver bow to carry panic through the ranks. Of the men, the best men, Telamonian Aias was by far the best, but only while Achilles was in dudgeon, since he, the peerless son of Peleus, was the finest man of all, and drove the finest horses. But he was lying now by his beaked sea-going ships, nursing his quarrel with the commander-in-chief, Agamemnon, son of Atreus. Meanwhile, on the sea-beach, his people passed the time in archery, throwing discs and casting javelins. The horses stood idle, each by its own chariot, munching clover and parsley from the marsh. Their masters' chariots lay covered up inside the huts, and the men themselves, who missed their battle-loving chief, strolled aimlessly about the camp, and did no fighting. But the rest marched on, and the whole plain seemed to be consumed by fire. Earth groaned beneath them as it does for Zeus the thunderer in his anger when he lashes the ground above Typhoeus in the Aramean mountains, where people say Typhoeus lies abed. Thus earth reverberated to their marching feet as they came swiftly on across the plain. Meanwhile, fleet Iris of the whirlwind feet was sent to the Trojans by Aegis bearing Zeus to bring them the portentous news. They had all foregathered, young and old alike, for a conference at Priam's doors. Iris of the nimble feet came up to them and spoke in a voice like that of Priam's son Polites, who was posted as a lookout for the Trojans on the top of old Aeetes' tomb, ready to dash home at the first sign of a sortie from the Achaean ships. Iris looked exactly like this man as she addressed herself to Priam. "Sire," she said, "I see that you are still as fond of interminable talk as you were in peacetime, though the death struggle is upon us. Indeed, I have taken part in many battles, but never have I seen so great and formidable a force. They are rolling over the plain to fight at the city walls like the leaves of the forest or the sands of the sea. Hector, I urge you above all to do as I say. In his great city, Priam has many allies, but these foreigners all talk different languages. Let their own captains in each case take charge of them, draw up their countrymen, and lead them into battle." Hector did not fail to recognize the goddess' voice and immediately dismissed the meeting. They rushed to arms. The gates were all thrown open, and with a great din the whole army, infantry and horse, poured out. Outside the town and some way off in the plain, there is a high mound with open ground on every side, which men call Thornhill, but the immortals know as the tomb of Dancing Marine. Sounds a bit like Games of Thrones, doesn't it? It was here that the Trojans and their allies now formed up in battle order. Priam's son, the great Hector of the flashing helmet, led the Trojans. With him marched by far the finest and most numerous force, keen spearmen, all of them. Et c'est reparti. The Dardanians were led by Anchises' admirable son Aeneas, whom Aphrodite conceived for Anchises when she clasped the men in her divine embrace on the slopes of Mount Ida. Aeneas was not in sole command, but was supported by Antenor's two sons, Archilochus and Acamas, both experienced in all kinds of fighting. The men that lived in Zelea, under the lowest spurs of Ida, and drank the dark water of Aesopus, a prosperous Trojan clan, were led by the famous son of Lycaon, Pandarus, who owed his skill with the bow to Apollo himself. Those from Adrasteia and the land of Apaesus, from Pythaea and the steep slopes of Tereia, were led by Adrestus and Amphius in his linen corslet. The two sons of Merops of Percote, who was a seer of surpassing skill and had done his best to dissuade his sons from hazarding their lives in the war. But they would not listen to him. Black death enticed them to their fate. The men from Percote and Practius, from Cestus, Abydos, and holy Arisbe, were led by Asius, son of Hirticus. The lordly Asius, whom his big and glossy horses had brought from Arisbe and the river Selais. We're nearly there, nearly. Hypathus was in command of the tribes of Pelasgian, spearmen who lived in deep-soiled Larissa. These men followed Hypathus and Peleus, offshoot of Ares, the two sons of Pelasgian Lethus, son of Teutomus. Acamas and the noble Peiros led the Thracians, whose lands are bounded by the swift-flowing Hellespont, while Euphemus, son of King Trosinus, son of Zeus, led the warlike Sicyones. Pyrocmes commanded the Paeonians with their curving bows. They had come from far, from Amydon, and the banks of the broad river Axius, the Axius whose waters are the most beautiful that flow over the earth. Pylamenes of the shaggy breast led the Paphlagonians from the lands of the Eneti, from which the wild mules come. They lived in Cytorus, round Sesamon, in pleasant homesteads by the river Parthenius, and Cromna, and Aegialus, and lofty Erythine. Odius and Epistrophus led the Alizones from distant Alibi, the native place of silver. Of the Mysians, Chromis and Enomus were in command. Enomus was an ogre, but all his bird lore did not save him from the black hand of death. He fell a victim to the great runner Achilles in the riverbed, when he made havoc on the Trojans and their allies. Phorcys and Prince Ascanius led the Phrygians, eager for battle from remote Ascania, while the Meonians were led by Methles and Antiphus, the sons of Telemenes, whose mother was the Gygaean lake. These two led the Meonians, whose native land is under Tmolus. Nastes led the Carians, men of uncouth speech, who possessed Miletus, Mount Phthiris of the myriad leaves, the stream of Meander, and the steep crest of Mycale. These were the men whom Amphimachus and Nastes brought, Nastes of Amphimachus and Amphimachus, the noble sons of Nomion. And what a fool Amphimachus was! He went into battle like a girl, decked in gold. Not that it saved him from a dreadful end. He fell to Achilles the great runner, there in the riverbed, and the provident Achilles made off with the gold. Last, Sarpedon and the peerless Glaucus led the Lycians from distant Lycia and the swirling stream of Xanthus. Finish. It's the end of the chapter. So, how did you like this long list? So yeah, did you count the ships as well? Did you count the number of ships as I told you to do? Because I didn't. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really, really hard. So yeah, hang on. Honestly, I read this chapter like, I don't know, 10 times. And I tried to listen to different audiobooks for the names and everything. And it was so hard because I'm not a native, I'm not English. So it was really, really hard trying to get the accentuation right and everything. And well, not even talking about the accentuation, but having, you know, A, E, A. How do you pronounce all of this? I don't know. So I just tried, and I took it as a game, and there. Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. No, yeah, I really hope, like, in next chapter we don't have such a list of names. Hopefully it will be the battle, so it will be a lot more epic and everything, because it's hard to give an epic side, an emotional side to a list of names and clans and ships. I mean, God, they even talks about the horses at one point. Oh God. So yeah, thank you. Oh, I think I can eat all the chocolate I want now as a. And yes, it's the Iliad. A pleb. 50 black ships. Oh no, there's a lot more than that. 50 black ships was only half of what Agamemnon had. Knowing that there was like 50 more clans than the one Agamemnon was heading. So yeah. Oh, request for what? It depends. Do I take requests? Reading requests? Because first I have to finish the book. And I don't know if it will be going very fast considering such chapters. Yeah, well, honestly, something we should do is like make a sort of how do you call it? We should make like a plan of all the ships and like actually make a picture of all all the number of ships and all the clans and how they're related to one another and their relations to the gods as well, because you'll see you'll remark that they're systematically related in their birth line or whatever, their family lines to the gods. So we should try to make a great big picture. It should take a whole wall, I think, with all the ships and how they were lined up, because it even at some point says where the ships are relating to one another. So oh, I'm definitely thinking about reading Moby Dick, that's for sure. But way later on. And you should know that there is another streamer who is actually reading Moby Dick. I've seen it for the past week or two. She's in creative as well. So yeah, she might. Well, I don't know. If you really want to listen to Moby Dick, you can listen to her. But yeah, I'll definitely do it later on. Yeah, if it's me you want to listen reading it. So yeah, because I'm big fan of the Victorian era, and I would really like to read some of the novels of the time. I mean, and now when I say Victorian era, of course it refers to the English, but I also like all the American, which I'm working on actually. So yeah. Oh yes, Wikipedia is brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, but we should still. I think I'm gonna do it because I just find it so funny. We should actually make a picture, a big 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 picture, with everything and how they're placed and the names of the troops and everything and the clans and where they come from and their relations to the gods and everything. It would actually make a great big. I don't know. It's like playing with big data. This is compiling great big amount of data. I mean, it's 10 pages long. It's bloody 10 pages long. So yeah. Yeah. By the way, well, I'll just continue my usual propaganda. Honestly, thank you for staying with me and for listening all through this, because I know it might not be very fun to listen to either. I mean, I try to make it fun and everything, but anyway, thank you very much. I mean, it's really heartwarming, and especially that you're participating into the chat now and talking about it. I mean, yeah, it's really thank you, because I I think I would be crying if there was no one, no one listening to